What's up, gang? Kawaii50 here with another fake Grand Order video, and this is my first video of the new year, so happy 2022 to everyone. I definitely want to talk with you all about this new servant, because I know there's a ton of people who have been waiting specifically for this foreigner. That servant is, of course, Yang Guifei. We're going to be going over all aspects of her kit, including craft essences, command codes, and allies, to ensure that this servant has a good spot on your team. She actually has a really interesting niche, and I'm pretty excited to talk about her, because I love servants that have interesting, different effects when it comes to fighting. If this video helps you out, or if you're just excited for Yang in general and want to show it, please go ahead and consider liking and subscribing. That really does help me out. Yang's deck holds 2 quick, 2 arts, and 1 buster card, and she has a single target arts noble phantasm, so she can of course arts brave chain. Her max HP is solid at 13,365, but her max attack is far more interesting at 12,342. It is in the top 20 attacks in the entire game. Her NP gain is at a 0.51, and with the 4 hits on her arts cards and the 4 hits on her quicks cards, plus the ability to arts brave chain off a 4-hit single target arts noble phantasm, her NP gain is really, really good. Insanely good, as a matter of fact. You should easily be able to single target loop her noble phantasm, no problem, as long as you have some good supporters. And her star absorption at 147 is pretty decent, ensuring that stars are going to flow to her. Put those on her arts cards and you have yet another solid way to gain noble phantasm. Yang Guifei's first skill is Love of 3001 rank A+, and this is honestly weird to talk about, because this skill is definitely getting a buff. So let's go ahead and take a gander at this. It starts with giving Yang invincibility and also increasing her NP gauge by 10% every 3 turns, so you're going to get 30% out of it. It also gains critical stars. It starts at 5 to 15, but post-upgrade you're looking at 15 to 25. It also gives her an instance of target focus. Initially this only worked on male enemies, but it ends up changing that this works on absolutely everybody. So that's a pretty solid buff to this skill. I would recommend maxing this skill last, because it is her main damage dealing, like, survivability skill. This is how she's going to survive from enemy assaults, especially pulling single target noble phantasms off of opponents. But there are some other skills we're going to want to prioritize, because Yang is primarily a damage dealing servant. Yang's second skill is easily her most important, Beautiful Consort rank A. This decreases the NP gauge by 1 for all enemies and increases Yang's NP gauge based on the amount drained. So let me go ahead and explain this for you. So it starts at level 1, you can drain 10% Noble Phantasm. That is 10% Noble Phantasm given to Yang Guifei per bar drain. So if you drain 3 bars, that's going to be 30% Noble Phantasm. If this skill's maxed out and you drain 3 bars, 1 from each enemy, that is 60% NP gain. It gets absolutely nutty, the amount she's able to charge herself while completely hampering the enemy team. It also decreases all enemies' defense by 10 to 20% for 3 turns for good measure. Easily max this first. For the damage you deal, it's going to go up. For the NP charge utility, that's going to go up too. It's just, there's no beating this skill. Beautiful Consort is an incredible bonus. And Yang's last skill is Fairy of the Flame Wheel rank A. When Yang is attacked, the enemy gets 10% defense down for 3 turns, and when she's attacked, it applies a burn to the enemy as well for 3 turns, also increasing her own defense by 10 to 20%. I recommend maxing this skill second, mainly because you want that bonus burn damage in order to hurt your opponents. But honestly, when we're looking at her first and her third skill, they work really well in tandem. So with them working well in tandem, it might honestly be in your best benefit to just level them together. Level them, keep them at the same level, keep them at the same cooldown, so you can go ahead and make sure Yang Guifei gets attacked, is able to apply those debuffs, and her Noble Phantasm is going to benefit. Because that's the main thing you want to benefit, that absurd Noble Phantasm. For append skills, easily go with mana loading. That 10 to 20% boost is good on absolutely everybody, and I'm just going to continue saying this in every single video. And now, Yang Guifei's Noble Phantasm. Rainbow Feathered Robe, Vow of Eternal Love. This Noble Phantasm is the main focus of her kit. It deals 900 to 1500% damage to a single enemy and also gives them burn for 3 turns. This also deals super effective damage to anybody affected by burn, and that's entirely based on overcharge. So you're getting between 150 to 200% additional damage on any burned enemy. That gets absolutely crazy. You will see Yang Guifei hitting for monumental amounts of damage. Now, when it comes to Noble Phantasm level, NP2 is generally the sweet spot for most servants, and Yang is of no exception. That NP2 is a huge damage boost that you're only going to see multiplied further by that super effective bonus. Can you get by with NP1? Absolutely, but with Yang, the more NP level you have, the better, since her damage is entirely focused in that Noble Phantasm. So who do we pair this new foreigner with to maximize her potential? Well, she is an arts-focused servant, so we want arts supporters, mainly Tamamo no Mai and Caster Artorio when she finally comes out on NA. That's going to be your main focus supporter. But who else can we pair her with? Maybe you want to try a different team comp, or maybe you don't have those servants that I mentioned. Well, for the allies section, I'm going to be focusing on servants who are also able to apply burn, because if you've got multiple ways to apply burn, then Yang's Noble Phantasm is always going to be hitting for huge amounts of damage, because that enemy is always going to be burned. Let's of course start with our freebie options. Our first option is probably the first servant a lot of you got, well, one of the first anyways, Ku Caster, who you got for completing Fuyuki for free. Why Ku Caster? Well, because of his Noble Phantasm Wicker Man. Wicker Man inflicts burn on all enemies that last for 10 turns. So if you have an ability to charge Ku's Noble Phantasm and fire it off, odds are Yang's going to be hitting that enemy routinely, and that burn is never going to drop off. Pretty great. Yume Ren is also able to provide burn to enemies with her Noble Phantasm, and you'll be getting her for free as well during a summer event. She's also able to provide Yang with a solid boost to her Noble Phantasm gauge, along with target focus on Yume Ren. Say you've got that first and third skill on cooldown, Yang can't take the hit, you can't afford her dying, have you take the hit instead. What a champion. This one's more for JP fam, but if you happen to have Dobrynia, she's actually really good to pair with Yang Guifei. Her Noble Phantasm can burn all enemies while decreasing their defense as well, and of course she has that very strong skill, her third skill, which increases her NP gauge and increases all allies' critical strength and lets them deal special attack damage to dragons, turning them into a mini Siegfried, so you can actually bring along Yang as a dragon slayer. I definitely want to mention Nero Bride. Nero Bride has a lot she can provide Yang as a supporter. She can inflict burn to a single enemy and decrease that enemy's defense, helping Yang deal more damage. All of her buffs are also targetable, so you can increase Yang's attack, crit scar drop rate, NP gain, give her an NP steroid, as well as recovering HP and increasing her defense. Nero Bride has been a very good servant since the day she's come out, and as she continues to get rank ups that improve her effectiveness, that's just going to remain true, no matter what. And as a final mention for an ally for Yang Guifei, I've definitely got to recommend Da Vinci Rider. Yang is very, very good with NP overcharge boosts. NP overcharge boosts are absolutely amazing on her for increasing her overall damage, and Da Vinci is able to provide that as well as a general Noble Phantasm damage boost, which kicks that up even more. Pretty much anybody on a team that can grant Yang NP overcharge level, Kama, for example, works very, very well too, is just going to ensure that she hits really hard. So please consider that when making your teams. So craft essences for Yang Guifei. Let's start with freebie options. If you happen to have Painting Summer available, I can wholeheartedly recommend that, increasing her arts card effectiveness, NP gain, and giving her a bit of starting NP gauge. If you don't have that option, starting NP gauge is always helpful, so consider giving her Dragon's Meridian. That'll give her a nice 50% to start with, and if you give it a turn, well, she can drain a bunch of Noble Phantasm from a wave of enemies and pretty much be ready to go. But when it comes to the primary stat you want on her craft essences, I've gotta go with NP overcharge level over absolutely everything else. That bonus NP overcharge level is what is directly tied to her dealing more damage to enemies that are burned, so pumping that up as much as possible is going to be insanely helpful. Let's of course consider Devilish Bodhisattva as the best pick. This is starting NP gauge and an increase of NP overcharge by 2 levels when using a Noble Phantasm. You can also of course give her Duke of Flames if starting NP gauge isn't your main focus. This grants NP strength on top of that, making sure that Noble Phantasm hits for even more damage. There is also of course, if you're looking for longevity and Yang is very good in longer fights, consider the One Who Wishes for Salvation. This has that increase of NP overcharge by 2 levels, but instead of only lasting for 1 Noble Phantasm, it lasts for 3 or 4 depending on what you've invested in it. That is pretty dang good. And of course we get to command codes, and command codes I am just going to go all out, giving Yang Guifei every single possible way she can inflict burn to her enemies to maximize that Noble Phantasm damage. That way you don't have to rely on an enemy hitting Yang or relying on another ally to inflict that burn. She'll just inflict burn with absolutely every command card she has at her disposal. First recommendation is the Bearded Scarlet Gentleman's Command Seal. When you attack with that engraved card, you're going to inflict burn for 3 turns. Jin's Lamp, again, inflicts burn for 3 turns, but also when you attack with that card, you're going to gain 2 critical stars. Remember, every little critical star counts. True Crimson Immortal Maiden's Command Seal is another excellent pick, inflicting burn damage and also increasing that card's critical damage by 5%. You're probably going to want to go ahead and throw this on her Buster card. And finally, of course, Meteoric Bellows has 3 turns of burn, but also increases critical star absorption of the engraved card by 50%. I would highly recommend throwing this on one of Yang's arts cards so you can draw those stars to that arts card and get more Noble Phantasm gain off of it. Overall, gang, Yang Guifei is a pretty dang good foreigner with a very unique mechanic that should make her really fun to use on pretty much any team you want to come up with. She is most focused around being a damage dealer, and she really ends up hitting her stride in longer fights where she's able to inflict that burn and gain the benefits from hitting multiple times with that Noble Phantasm. I do still think there are far more powerful servants coming out this upcoming year, but this year is actually just stacked with really good servants, and it is not by any means that Yang Guifei is bad, far from it. If you need a foreigner on your team, if you're missing somebody on that slot, I really don't think you could do any better right now than having Yang Guifei on your team. She is just that good. But of course I want to know what you all think, so let me know your thoughts about her down in the comment section below. Let me know if you think there are any allies, craft essences, or command codes I might have missed. And let me know if you're generally excited for her, or if there's another foreigner on your radar. I know there was another foreigner recently announced on JP that might have made you a little more excited. So go ahead and let me know. If you want to talk more Fate Grand Order, of course my Discord server is always open. I want to give a big thanks to the patrons on Patreon, the subscribers and followers over on Twitch, and of course all of you subscribers on YouTube for your continual support. I hope you will continue supporting me into this new year. Anyways gang, this is Kawaii50. I hope you all have a phenomenal day, and I will see you all in the next video.